All right, this is jpeg2RAW, show number 58, October 9th. And tonight we have our very first adventure sports photographer, Michael Clark. Michael, how are you?
I am well. Thank you for having me on the show.
We're glad to have you here. We were just talking in the pre-show about, you know, I might not be able to physically do a lot of your stuff that you do, but I also would not do it just out of fear. So we'll get to that in just a minute. We do have a few housekeeping things to do. Tonight we have guest host, Sess White. Sess, how are you doing? Oh, Sess,
You might be muted.
You might be muted. He's setting something up. Sess, it comes from our Facebook group, and he is filling in for Kathleen, although Kathleen may be making an appearance here in just a minute. Tim is back. He missed a couple of shows. And I desperately missed Tim because without him, I can't do the show notes. Tim, how are you?
Very good, very good.
And you can see I am wearing long sleeves tonight because it is getting nice and cool here. I love this time of year.
Yeah, I don't know. I woke up yesterday. It was 41 outside. I'm not ready for that yet.
Yeah. Before we get into Michael, I want to remind everybody we are still running the, how do you say that, Wacom Intuos tablet, pen tablet that we're giving away. You know, the sign up is all the way through the end of October, and then we'll give it away first show in November. Here's Kathleen. Hey, Kathleen.
Hi.
Okay.
Sorry.
And there's Sess.
Yeah. I had to change something in Google, so I'm good now. Hi.
Okay.
Hey.
So
Hey, Michael, how are you?
I am great. Thank you.
We're so glad to have
someone
you
is
on.
looping.
I'm so excited.
Excellent. Thank you for having me.
All right, and we're glad Kathleen can come in. Sometimes these things can be a little challenge to get the invites to go. But
Yeah.
back on to the Intuos tablet, you have until the end of October to sign up. I think it's actually, to check the website, it's like the 28th or something like that. And shortly after that, we'll be doing another giveaway. Kathleen may have an announcement at some point about something, but we're not ready for that yet, are we, Kathleen?
Not quite.
Okay. But on top of that, I want to say that we recently, I'm not going to call out any names, but we recently had a member of our Facebook group, and I only know this because he told me before he did it, purchase a camera through our Amazon link. And that gave us a nice big credit. So when you were getting closer to Christmas and we're doing all that, you know, think about jpeg2RAW and using our Amazon credit, because like we've said before, all that money goes right back into buying gifts that we give away. You know, Tim, Kathleen, and I do not do this for money. We just do this for fun, and we do it as a way to give back. So we are we're actually ready. We could do another giveaway right now, but we want this one to run out. Do this one, and then we'll do the next one. And what we do is pick one or two items, oh, not one or two, but two or three items, and then let people in our Facebook group vote on which one they want to be the giveaway. So it's a kind of a way for us to give back, because we know how expensive photography can be. We're also going to try one thing tonight, and so I won't use up much more of this time, but we want to try and get this as close to the hour as possible. When we have an exciting guest like Michael, it gets difficult. But if we don't finish everything with Michael, we'll just have an excuse to invite him back again. But, you know, to not abuse Michael, not abuse our listeners, and to give me more time to do the edits after the fact, we want to try and limit this as close to an hour as possible. So we'll try and get some of your questions, you know, during the show, but we'll leave maybe 5 or 10 minutes at the end of the show to get some questions. And then we'll have a small section after the show of, you know, after the show hangout, but we're going to try and be a little bit more timely. So that said, Michael, how are you?
I'm excellent. Thank you.
And once you know, I said you were an adventure photographer, but you know, you do quite a bit. It's not just adventure, and adventure actually can mean a lot.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I showed a lot of rock climbing photos there, but there's a lot of variation in what just adventure sports are. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Well, I started out, 16 years ago as an adventure sports photographer, shooting mostly rock climbing. That was the one genre that I was really passionate about. And after 2 or 3 years, practically living in my car, and, I figured out I wasn't going to make a whole ton of money just shooting rock climbing, so I had to kind of expand out into all the other adventure sports like whitewater kayaking, mountain biking, big wave surfing, base jumping, pretty much, skiing, snowboarding, whatever was an adventurous type sport. And then, after about shooting 8 or 9 years of that, people started calling me for just adventurous assignments where I needed to have the skills of a climber to pull off the assignment, like hanging 100 feet underneath the helicopter that's flying, a few thousand feet over the ocean, or doing all kinds of crazy stuff that,
Wow.
the normal photographer wouldn't have the skills to do besides the photography aspect. So it's right. In terms of adventure, anytime there's an adventure, involved in a photo shoot, I sometimes get the call for those assignments.
So hold on. Lots of questions come through my mind,
Okay.
but one of them is hanging from a helicopter.
Uh-huh.
So how far beneath the helicopter are you hanging?
Well, this was an assignment for men's, men's fitness, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. They wanted me to photograph a search and rescue team out in Sonoma, California.
Okay.
And they do rescues in the ocean, on cliffs and stuff. So they have a technique called long lining, where they have a person hanging from the bottom of that line, and they drop the person in the ocean to scoop up a person who might be smashed up against a cliff or something.
Yeah.
And then they just snake them out of there really fast. Or they do the same thing on a cliff, where they just zip in with this person hanging below the helicopter, and they just put a little harness over the top of the person and whisk them right off the cliff.
Okay.
And so I was the person hanging from the line. I was the person hanging off the cliff. I was the person in the water. We did all kinds of crazy stuff. It was a blast.
I thought I was crazy when I went bungee jumping 20 years ago. Oh my God.
Well, you were. Right?
Yes, I was. I agree.
I found you, Michael, by the video that Mike showed earlier that you made. But when I opened your website, I really did not know what I was getting myself into. Mm-hmm. And your scope of talents are just so far stretched. It's just amazing to me. It's just amazing to me.
Well, I mean, that's definitely how I could make it as a professional early on, is because, if I'm a portrait photographer, there's thousands of portrait photographers around the world.
Tell me about it.
Tens of thousands, Yeah.
So
how do you make a name for yourself? In the rock climbing world, there was 25 of us when I started out worldwide that had the skills to do that stuff. So you had a lot less competition. There was a lot smaller need for that type of images, of course, but it was easier to make a name like I do this, because there's not many people out there doing that.
So ironically, the adventure photography was the path of least resistance.
That's the way it turned out. It wasn't easy by any means. I won't say
that. Yeah.
Rock climbing involves carrying 100-pound packs 3,000 feet up the backside of giant cliffs with 1,000 feet of rope and a few cameras.
So I just dropped a link to that article in Men's Fitness into the chat. So if you like, there's a picture of the helicopter with the rope there.
Yeah, there's a whole gallery on my website that shows images from that website, from that assignment as well. But
yeah, I think this is off your website.
Okay.
Oh, my word.
Speaking of ropes, there's an article on your website, and a great article. I loved reading it the other night, but it did send some chills down my spine. So while these look, for us that are sitting here in our chairs, these look like they're fun. They obviously come with risk. Mm-hmm. And you wrote an article about one of the times that seemed very, very risky, and actually was a close call. You want to tell us about that one?
Well, I mean, the funny thing is, there's probably, if people have 9 lives, then I've used up about 6 or 7 of them already. There's been several near-death accidents. This rope incident, I was shooting an assignment for Climbing Magazine. This is like 10 years ago. And when you're shooting climbing, you ascend fixed lines so that you can get up to the top of some of this stuff. So in this instance, I had some climbers. It was like a 300-foot spire. So imagine my finger is 300 feet tall. Yeah. And I went up the gully and photographed the climbers coming up the side of this 300-foot tall, huge cathedral spire. And then they affixed a rope at the top, and I came up the other side on a static line, which you're using these ascenders that slide up the rope, but then they don't slide back down. And there's 2 of them, and it's a complicated setup. But the point is that, like 30 feet from the top, I realized that my rock was hanging over a crystal that was about the same size as my finger, a quartz crystal pointing straight out from the wall that was razor sharp. And there were hundreds of them at this one level. And, so the rope kind of came off the top, went like that, and then came straight down to me. And so the whole time, you're basically like jumping up and down on this system as you go up. You're just jumping up and down on your rope on a razor blade. And luckily, I use static ropes, which are much more durable than dynamic ropes that stretch. But I got to like 10 feet below that crystal and saw my rope exploded around that crystal, which is not a good sign. And it appeared from my point of view that I was hanging by like a third of the sheath, which is the covering for the core of the rope. So at that moment, I thought, I'm going to die any second. It's over. There was not a doubt in my mind I was about to die any second. The climbers were still on top, luckily, about 40 feet above me. At this point, I'm like 200 feet off the ground, 250
Oh my gosh.
And, the wall is blank. There's nothing. It's like touching the wall of your house, and I have gear with me, but there's no place to put any of this gear or anything. So I yell up there after a few seconds go by. And one of the guys I was photographing was an older climber who was, he had a lot of experience. He looked down, he saw the rope. We didn't have to say a word. He just said, "I'll get the rope to you as fast as I can." Because they had an extra rope that they had been climbing.
Oh, my word.
So I just hung there, and it took about 2 to 3 minutes. I don't know exactly how long it was, praying. I was making my peace because I was like, I'm not going to be here when that rope gets here. I'm going to looking at the ground, I'm going to splat right there. It's going to be a mess because my friends are going to have to rappel right down on top of me. And anyway.
The things that go through your mind.
Exactly. And so, the weird thing was that I calmed down. I thought I'd freak out, but I just, things became very calm and clear-headed. And it took them a few minutes because their rope wasn't clipped into the anchors and it was already coiled up, so they had to uncoil it and clip it in. Anyway, the rope drops in front of my face. I tie in like the fastest tie-in I've ever done in my life. And, after that, I'm safe, and I just continue up the line I'm on, rip it off the top of the crystal and get to the top, and they're kind of waiting for me to freak out. The guy pulls up my rope and looks at the cut, and there was, like 1.5 strands of the core left, something like that, out of 7.
So how... I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
How often do people ask what the brand of the first rope was that held you?
Yeah, really.
It was a sterling rope. Nobody's ever asked that question.
Oh, wow, really?
Good question.
10 mil rope, so thank you, Sterling. They gave me that rope for free because they sponsored me for a lot of this stuff.
Wow.
And I'm sure that's what you would use in the future.
Yeah, maybe a thicker rope, but I'm very cautious now. I have rope protectors on all my ropes. Yeah. And the funny thing was, like 2 days later, I was still on assignment. I got to the top of that, and I stayed there for 4 hours on top of that spire.
You still got to come down.
Well, I still had to come down, but we still had to shoot the assignment. It's not like I could just rappel off and go home.
Yeah.
I still shot for the rest of that day. When came time to rappel off that 300-foot spire, I was extremely cautious, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
And I had to shoot again on a similar spire 2 days later.
Did it take you a while for your hands to calm down? Were they shaking at all, or?
Not too bad. I mean, I was up there. I had a lot of time by myself because once those guys rappelled down, I was totally by myself on basically a kitchen table 300 feet in the sky.
Oh, wow.
And they were going to climb an adjacent spire. So
how many times have you climbed before that?
Mm-hmm.
I've been climbing for 15 years or more.
And at that point already?
At that point, maybe 10 years.
Oh, so you were experienced at that point.
Yeah, I mean, this is not a lack of experience or anything anybody did wrong. This is just an objective hazard that happened. It's nobody's fault. It definitely wasn't the fault of the climbers who hung the rope for me. It's just, stuff happens when you're out there.
It's nature.
How were the images that came out of that photo shoot? Did you love them or hate them? Because I know if I was under stress like that, I'm not sure I could promise anything good to anybody after that point.
Shaky hands.
They were okay. I mean, the images that afternoon were decent. The images a couple days later were much better.
Yeah.
I thought, because it just depended on the angle. I mean, they weren't horrible. They weren't the best images I've ever shot. But
would you consider yourself more of a photography junkie or an adrenaline junkie?
The funny thing when people ask about the adrenaline stuff is, people say these extreme quote unquote sports, and there's very few of these sports that I consider extreme. Maybe base jumping would be the one extreme sport, or whitewater kayaking, and some of the super huge waves that people surf. The rest of it, I don't even get an adrenaline burst when I'm climbing. I've never felt adrenaline. If I feel adrenaline when I'm climbing, it's a bad day. It's going to be something horrific.
Wow.
I mean, I've had like a beach ball sized boulder fall off a 300-foot cliff, and it glanced off my back.
Oh, wow.
Only because I heard it and pulled in, and it would have torn my upper torso in half. I've been hit by a car on my road bike and flew like 60 feet.
Oh, wow.
I've fallen into quicksand. And it took like half an hour to get out of that, and I was just lucky that I didn't fall in farther. I've had a bunch of things happen that are pretty wild.
Well, Mike, you just had a picture of the base jumper on. Do you actually do those base jumping as well for the photography?
I do not base jump. I mean, I wish I could, because it looked like a lot of fun. But that guy is one of the best in the world and has 17,000 jumps. So I hung over the edge of the cliff off some tiny little bushes that I'm sure couldn't hold my weight. But I'm not going to jump off the cliff, because that would be suicide without the experience those guys have.
Yeah, I'm trying to find that again.
So I had a quick question. How many of these assignments have you done to where you're actually like almost kind of scared for the people that are out there? I mean, I know a lot of them are, well, they're all pros, right? That you're shooting
for the most part. Yeah.
But I mean, how many of them you're like, okay, that's just crazy. You're gonna do what? Like, is there any?
There aren't many. There's almost never any like that. Because I mean, this stuff's all been done. We've all seen pictures of this stuff. It's not like it's something nobody's ever done before. For the most part, there's a few things that I've shot that haven't ever been done before. But you've got to trust that person knows what they're doing. And it's just my skills as a rock climber, as a cyclist, and other things. I understand their process. It's if they're jumping off a 50-foot cliff, they started jumping off 1-foot curbs, and then they built their progression.
Process. Yeah.
And so if they feel safe, then I'm good,
Right, you're not working with amateurs. You're working with people who have done this before.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes they're amateurs. There's lots of sports where there's not a professional category in the adventure world.
Well, when I say amateur, it's not their first jump. They've done this quite a bit before.
Exactly, and that base jumper works with Red Bull, and I mean, he jumps all the time. And I work with climbers that I know. There's definitely a little powwow at the beginning of photo shoots, and especially there's something I call camera courage, where you pull out a camera and people start doing stuff that they wouldn't normally do. And so, and so especially with like mountain bikers, where they have a choice whether they launch off that cliff or not. I get with them beforehand and I'm like, look, I don't want you guys to get hurt. You don't want to get hurt. If you don't know 120% you can pull this off safely, then don't do it.
Okay.
Unless I'm shooting for Red Bull, where the whole point is they're going to do something that's
crazy.
Not and then I'm just the fly on the wall, and I'm not directing stuff necessarily.
So how'd you go from? How'd you get started in get clients like Red Bull?
It's a long. I mean, I've been doing this 16 years now, so. As a photographer, you start out, you shoot your friends. Like I started out as a rock climbing photographer, shooting my climbing friends who are by no means professional climbers. And then, once you start building up solid images in that group and you start getting some of those published, you just keep moving up, to the intermediate climbers or advanced climbers, and then to professional climbers. And then you start, getting into enough images on your website or whatnot that you can cold call up these athletes and say, hey, my name's this, blah, blah, blah. You can look at my work. I'd love to go out with you. And then, you start getting assignments with whoever. And then,
we were playing in a pre-show a lot of your publications, a lot of publications you've been in. You've been in a lot of publications, and they're on his website to go see that. And we'll have all the links in the show notes. But do you approach some of these magazines, or are they approaching you?
I definitely approached all of them in the beginning. Sometimes now, or maybe once I was established after 6 or 7 years, they would call me because they would do Google searches, or they would, there's different ways that clients find you, and they would track you down. Especially in the adventure world, I mean, there's a few hundred, high-end adventure sports photographers. There's maybe a dozen of us that are the top guys, I would say.
Well,
So they can track you down.
You had mentioned at first, there was only maybe a dozen of the guys who do what you do, and now there's, 100 or so. Do you feel any pressure to push it further? Or do you feel pressure to push it further just because you've been doing it for so long and you're looking for something new?
I always feel pressure because, I mean, there's always somebody waiting to take your job.
Right.
You can't just sit back, and I'm always looking to differentiate my work from other people's work. Like, maybe 8 years ago, I started using strobes a lot more and flash in my photography, and that just adds one more layer of complexity between you and the next photographer. And now everybody's using strobes, so the next new thing's motion. And I think I want to find athletes who are pushing it. I'm not necessarily pushing it harder.
Are you using strobes while you're on a mountain?
I have.
Side of a mountain?
Yeah.
He has a few shots where he's like there's one I'm thinking of where it's like a cavern and the mountain climber's hanging down, and I think he used a strobe on that shot.
Yeah, that's a good example of working hard, because it was 98 degrees that day, and we hiked 200 plus pounds of lighting gear into that cave. So, I mean, that took all afternoon just to get the gear in place for that 15 minutes of shooting.
Now, how many of you were there?
There were probably 4 of us, I think. So
okay. It was a little distributed, but that's a lot of weight.
I carried most of it because they were carrying their own climbing gear and other stuff.
There you go.
So, anyway.
What kind of lighting gear are you taking with you?
What kind of lighting gear? I think it was Kathleen's.
Yeah, I have, speed lights. I'm a Nikon shooter, so I have Nikon speed lights. I also have a Linchrome strobes.
Okay.
So I have the Ranger setup and the Ranger Quadra setup. So 1,100 watt-seconds of power and a bunch of heads and packs. They're all battery-powered stuff.
Right.
I'm in the outdoors.
Yeah.
How now, the one that Kathleen was talking about, we haven't come to that one yet, but the one we did earlier, but the one Kathleen's talking about, that looks like you're probably on the ground. But if you're climbing up the side of a mountain, how are you using these strobes? Well,
you have an assistant holding the strobe. Or if it's a shot like the one we're showing right now, I mean, this one isn't strobe, the one that's up on the website right now of Chris Sharma. If it's a cliff like that where you can hang it out over the edge of the cliff on a boom arm, you can do that, or you generally have to have an assistant holding it if you're off the ground.
Do you guys notice? I know Michael knows this, obviously, but the rest of you guys notice anything with this image about the person?
Well, that he's not strapped in?
No ropes whatsoever.
Oh, I was looking, I was like, what is he doing?
No ropes whatsoever, and he's going to continue to climb from there, isn't he, Michael? It looks like there's nowhere to go.
That's the biggest hold on the climb. He stayed there for about 20 minutes.
Where is
I couldn't even hold on for 20 seconds.
That's crazy.
This is in Mallorca, Spain. This was an article I shot for Men's Journal magazine, and Chris Sharma, the athlete, the climber here, is one of the best climbers in the world by far. And this is, at the time, this was one of the hardest routes ever done in this style. It's called deep water soloing. And basically you're free soloing, rock climbing over the ocean. And so you're up to about 100 feet off the water. At this point, he's like 60 to 70 feet off the water. So if you fall, you just fall into the ocean. That may not sound that bad, but
70 feet.
Pretty hard from 70 feet out.
Yeah.
And, he's insanely strong. And he goes straight up from there. I know it looks like there's no holds on that climb, but, this was the rest for him. So
a rest.
Exactly.
Hanging like that is a rest?
Yeah.
Because he's not
he would put his feet on the wall. He would do a few tricks here and there, but
wow.
I mean, that hold is huge, so...
Yeah, that hold's huge. Okay.
For a rock climber.
So tell us about your preparation that goes into a session for you. Like, if you know that you're going to go out and shoot whatever sport, what's going through your head? What do you have to prepare the day before?
If it's a shoot for my portfolio, then I just come up with the ideas. But if it's a shoot with a client, then we have discussions about the types of images they want. For myself, you want to build a story for some clients. Some clients just want a single or a couple images that help tell the story. So I visually, if I can go scout the location, I'll do that for sure, because that may change how I approach stuff. Sometimes it's really remote and you can't do that. Otherwise, I'll make what I call a shot list. like all the basic shots I need to get from this shoot, and I'll dream up some pretty wild shots that I may or may not be able to get, and that'll help me decide, do I need to take that 100 pounds of strobes or the 50 pounds of strobes, or do I need to take all this outdoor gear with me, or what do I need to do to get this shot? But basically the shot list is my, it's in a little notebook. Sometimes it's on my iPhone now with the new technology. But that kind of directs the whole shoot for me. And it's also, for me, thinking out and pre-thinking images helps me to create images instead of just taking images, which I think is a very big distinction. When I do workshops, I try to get people to shift into think about creating an image instead of just taking an image. Not that you can't get an amazing image just taking images, but if there's a little forethought, you can take an image to the next level pretty quickly.
That's awesome. When I was looking at your work, the thing that struck me the most was your surf photography. I grew up in Hawaii, and I've been telling my husband for years that January, you don't even go to the beach because there is no beach. You just don't even go. The waves are so big that it's completely washed away, and you just stay as far away as possible. And so when I found your images, I rushed him into the room to show him. I'm like, this is what it is, and people are actually on these waves. It's nuts. So when you're photographing these pictures, are you on a jet ski in front of the surfer?
Oh, that's good.
It depends on where you're at. Most of the stuff I've shot in Hawaii has been either in the water or on the shore. They don't allow jet skis out in the water at Pipeline because the waves are pretty, gnarly.
Yeah.
It depends on the size of the waves. I'm not a surfer. I live in New Mexico. There's not a whole lot of waves here. So I have a buddy out in Hawaii that's one of the best surf photographers in the history of surfing. His name is Brian Bielman, and we're close friends. And we don't really compete in terms of clients at all, so we can go out and shoot together and not really worry about that kind of stuff. And he's kind of taken me under his wing, I got to say, in the last 4 years, and given me access to stuff that I would never have access to, like the top surfers in the world. So, Hawaii, shooting from the beach, I went to Tahiti last year, and from Tahiti, that might be the images you're talking about, we were shooting from a boat.
Okay.
We were like 60 to 70 feet away from the surfers while they're on the wave.
Because I saw one where you've got him right in the tunnel.
Exactly.
And it's like the tunnel would be, basically behind you if you were turned backwards. And I was like, he's got to be on something. Because you were level, so you weren't in the water.
If the wave is curling like this, we're basically on a boat going over the shoulder of that same wave.
You're catching them as you go.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Which is why it looks like I'm pointing down on that wave, because we're higher up on the edge of the wave than the surfer is.
Yeah.
So that's a rare instance, because the wave doesn't break. It's like a mile offshore where that wave breaks. So you got to you can't stand on shore and get
no. You cannot. Yeah.
And I mean, as a rock climber, I find it pretty scary getting in the water.
I bet. Water is incredibly powerful.
It is, especially when your fins are scraping the reef right underneath the water. And if you get caught,
you're done.
If you get sucked up into the wave and slammed onto the reef, I mean, there's been more surf photographers die at Pipeline in the last 10 years than surfers. Let's put it that way.
Wow.
Yeah.
And there can be up to 30 guys in the water shooting pictures at Pipeline. So it's crazy.
For the average person, it's hard enough to get a sharp, in-focus frame properly image when we're on the ground, maybe with a non-moving subject.
Steady.
So here you got moving everything. Everything's moving. The subject's moving, the water's moving, you're moving. What are you doing to get these sharp and focused photos?
Well, I mean, from the boat, it's easy. You don't have to have a housing or anything like that. It's just like shooting any sports. You put it in continuous focus and you plant the center focus point on your subject or whatever focus point you want to be for the composition. But when you're in the water, you have an underwater housing, and probably 80% of the time you have a fisheye lens, and you're using what's called hyperfocal distance, where you might be shooting at like f8 for an aperture, and you set the lens to where the infinity marks on one of the hyperfocal distance marks on the lens, and that way everything from, say, infinity to 2 feet in front of the lens is in focus, and you tape the lens down. So there's no autofocus.
Okay.
You fully tape the lens down, you tape all the settings down so nothing changes. And then it's a point and shoot. So you just have a handle with a button on it, and you just point the camera at whatever you want, and it's like a trigger. you just blast away as the surfer comes by. The problem is you got to be really close.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if you get hit by the surfboard, that's more dangerous than the wave on some level. Sometimes people shoot from farther back with like a 50 or a 70 to 200, so they're not right there in the action. And then you're actually using the autofocus, but it's like being on a boat. You're just swimming.
I know you're Nikon, and at one point you had a D700. What are you shooting with now?
I have a D4 and a D800 at the moment.
Okay. And what's your for the water photography, for the surfing? What image are you what lens are you normally using for that?
I used to have the 10.5 with my D300, but now that I've moved up to all full frame cameras, I've got the 16 millimeter Nikkor, which is still a fisheye. It's just made for the full frame. And I use that on the D4.
And you're literally taping the settings down with tape.
Yeah, mostly the lens, just so the focusing
so it doesn't autofocus.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I mean, the autofocus is off, but you're taping it down so that
it doesn't move.
Because it's like you're in a washing machine sometimes, you get nailed. You're in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yeah.
Can you see
I know what the inside of the undertow looks like. I remember it well.
Oh, no.
Can you see the image that I have pulled up now with the surfer? Is that with a 16 millimeter lens?
No, that's with like a 500 f4.
Okay, I was going to say...
That was shot from the shore.
Okay.
And that's
I was going to say, you're not taking a 500 f4 into the water with you.
Oh, no.
No, yeah. And that's a smaller wave today. That's maybe like a 30-footer. This is the I count
Small,
Small.
in Waimea Bay back in 2009.
Can you say this again? Because when I tell my husband that I grew up around 30 and 40-foot waves, he's like, "You're making this up." I am like, "I am not making it up. Go Google it."
Where did you grow up?
I grew up on Molokai.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is Waimea Bay. I mean, I don't know what Molokai Bay is. I'm sure it's got some sizable waves. It's Hawaii.
Mainly in December and January is when they get that big, but not normally.
December 9th, 2009. I know that because the Eddie Aikau is the biggest surfing event in the history of surfing, and this was one of the early waves of that day. He literally dropped, as you can see, 15 feet off the top of the wave, straight down.
It's like he wasn't even touching the water almost.
He never touched the water till halfway down the wave.
Wow.
And there were guys, there's a few pictures in there I think I sent you, there's a guy on a 60-foot wave. So that's why I say this is a smaller wave.
Yeah. It's just insanity. It's just insanity.
That's like a 55-footer there.
I just remember growing up and my mom always say, "Kathleen, you just never, ever, ever turn your back on the water. Don't ever do it because you never know. You never know."
Well, I was shooting with Brian last year at Pipeline, and there was 3 or 4 photographers in a line with some big lenses, and I was crouched down looking, getting something out of my bag, and a big wave rolled in, and it just rolled the water all the way halfway up the beach, and I picked up my bag and Brian's bag, and they would have fully gotten washed away with thousands of dollars of equipment. I mean, Brian just looked back at me and was like, "Dude, you just saved my life." So it's just crazy what can happen out there. Anyway.
Yeah, that's so crazy.
The wave we have up now is how big, you said?
It's like a 50 to 55-footer. It's hard to measure these things,
Yeah.
I'm not sure that's the highest it got, but that's a giant stinking wave.
Yeah. It's bigger than anything I've ever seen.
So.
That's like your life being chased right there when you're on that surfboard.
Yeah, and there was nobody swimming when that was out.
Oh, no.
I mean, there weren't a family. It wasn't like family time with kids out there. So, we've looked at surfing. We looked at the mountain, the mountain climbing and that kind of stuff. What is your favorite to shoot?
That's the hard question. I just like, doing a little bit of everything. I like changing it up. So, if I've shot a lot of rock climbing, it's nice to go shoot some surfing or, mountain biking or something else. I'm not sure I have a favorite. I mean, the surfing's fun because it's hard to beat standing on the beach, in Hawaii. As a job. But, as good as that sounds, I mean, this latest book I wrote, Exposed Inside the Life and Images of a Pro Photographer, talks about this. People think, oh, you're going to Hawaii to shoot surfing, your life is so rough. Okay, you get there, and the waves are good. You go out there at 6:30 right before sunrise, and you're on the beach until like 30 minutes after dark. You never leave the beach. If you need to pee, you go pee in the bushes. You bring all the food. I mean, you're baked out of your mind from the sun. And then you do that 3 days in a row, and it's not sounding so much fun. You know,
Yeah.
Tahiti, I was on this boat that had a rock-hard seat. I was sitting on a towel the second 2 days, and you're going up and over 20, 30-foot waves 12 hours nonstop.
Oh,
You never go in. If you need to go to the bathroom, you jump in the water and, you know, make things happen. But
magic. Make the magic
it's
happen.
not nearly as, you know,
Yeah, I
nice
guess
sounding as it is.
It's
in
hard,
reality.
hard work. Yeah.
after
Yeah.
the first few hours, you lose the beauty of the situation. Huh?
Exactly. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, surfing is like skiing or some of these sports. If you blink for a few seconds, you could miss the
miss
best
it.
wave of the day, and that's the shot.
So I gotta imagine something like surfing photography. You are just cranking out the images because it's such
great.
fast motion.
Mhm.
And so, you know, I guess in rock climbing, you probably don't take quite as many, but in surfing, you must just
It's
take a
ridiculous.
crazy amount of images.
I mean, a rock climb, maybe a 200-foot route, I'll shoot 150 images.
Yeah.
On a surfing day, I think in Tahiti last year was the most images I've ever shot in a 10-day period, and I shot 12,000 images.
Wow.
I'm still editing that shoot. I don't know if I'll
Oh
ever-
wow.
So how are you? I imagine you get a lot of compact flash cards and stuff like that, but do you
Yeah.
bring along like a laptop, portable hard drives or something?
You know, those shoots like that where I'm in civilization to some degree, yeah, I definitely bring a laptop, but I've got 200 gigabytes of flash cards, especially now with video stuff.
Okay.
Stuff like my Patagonia expedition race images where you're in some of the most remote places on Earth, and you bring a laptop, but you're not going to see it that often.
Mhm.
You're just shooting on the compact flash cards, you know,
So 12,000 images, are those raw?
all raw.
All raw.
yeah.
There you go.
Don't shoot JPEGs.
And they're not 12,000 D800 files, are they?
No, I don't really use the D800 for sports unless I'm using strobes.
Okay.
But I will say the D800 is unbelievable camera. It might be one of the best cameras ever created by human hands.
And I had a
But
question
my
about
computers are on my knees, just freaking out with the size of those files.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sess. What was
that. Okay. Wow. Yeah. Big files. My question was, well, you kind of deflated it with the. You said you didn't shoot sports with it, but the focus thing. Have you had much issue with the focus on the D800?
No, it's pretty much the same focus as the D4.
Okay.
It's just the frame rate isn't fast enough. You know, 4 frames a second. If I'm using strobes and it's only going to be one shot here and there, when the strobe pops, then I'll pull that one out. But the D4, you know, 10, 11 frames a second, especially for surfing. And the reason I got the D4 is that buffer. I can shoot 100 frames without it
Constant.
locking up.
Oh wow.
100
Which
raw
for surfing
frames.
is a big deal because, you know, they could be on the wave for 7 seconds. That's like 70 or 80 frames. With my D700, it would lock up after 24, 25 shots, and I'd have to
And they're still going, and you're not shooting.
Exactly. So you'd have to be very choosy as to where you started the sequence and where you stopped, and you might think something cool is going to happen, and you let off. You know, and as soon as you let off, the most amazing thing happens the whole day, and you're just like, what am I doing?
That's with the D700 or the D800?
That's with pretty much any camera besides the D4, because you
dang
hit
it.
the
So now I
buffer.
Yeah.
You know,
Now over time, you've kind of gotten a little bit of a flow, like, okay, I think I know what he's about to do, or something like that. Yeah,
I mean, that's the trick. For all these sports, you've kind of got to know the sports. It's just like if you shoot football or if you shoot actors or portraits, you kind of get a feel for what's going to happen next. So you can anticipate.
Going through your images, other than the landscape ones, this one seemed, at least on the surface, to be the most tame. But I know there's got to be a story behind this image.
I see some anguish on his face for some reason.
Yes. There's got to be more to this than I see right here.
Yeah, well, this was shot during the Patagonian expedition race in southern Chile at the very tip of South America. And we're in the Magellan Straits, which is where this was shot. And we had been hiking through, we were at 500-600 miles from the nearest refugio, much less a town in southern Chile, and we had been hiking for 4 days, raining sideways the entire time. It rained sideways the entire race. It's like 45 to 55 degrees. It was miserable.
Wow.
We were about to go hypothermic, and we were waiting for a boat from the race was supposed to pick us up in this bay in the middle of nowhere to take us to the finish line of the race, because it's a long story. But anyway, so we ended up in this bay, and these fishermen, this guy and his son, happened to be out in the bay, and they fish for it's red algae on the bottom of the ocean. And so we had a walkie-talkie. We radioed over to the boat, the one guy who spoke Spanish with us, and they agreed to pick us up because we were about to go hypothermic. It was just howling wind. You know, we were destroyed. We just spent 5 hours. It took us 5 hours to go 1 kilometer. That's how dense the jungle we were in was.
Wow.
In the rain, you know, climbing up and down all over the place. It was just, it's kind of a nuts story. But anyway, we spent a day and a half with these guys on their boat because they were hiding out from a storm in the Magellan Straits in this bay, and our boat never showed up. And so he decided one day he was going to, sorry, this is dragging on a bit, but
no, that's fine.
It's a good story.
So these guys, as soon as we got on the boat, I was with another photographer and a writer from the States and then a guide from Chile. And it was like a National Geographic moment. We saw these two guys and we're like, wow, these guys are amazing to look at. Look at these guys. And so they were kind of mystified by us because they're in the middle of nowhere, and these, like, you know, 4 gringos walk out of the middle of nowhere and like show up on their boat. So the next day he decides we're gonna, you know, he's gonna jump overboard and get some sea urchins and a king crab for lunch. And we're like, great, we want to photograph you working. So
That's
this is him.
food if I've ever heard it.
You know, it's a 1-inch wetsuit that he's wearing, 1 inch thick.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so I photographed the whole process of him getting to the wetsuit, jumping overboard. He's breathing out of a garden hose with no regulator on the end of it that's attached to a compressor on the boat, and he dives down like 100 feet.
Holy moly.
Get this stuff in water that's barely above freezing. And we're talking like 35-degree water. And comes up, and he throws this giant bag with all the sea urchins over the side, and he was hanging on the side of the boat to watch our reaction to this. And I stuck with them while everybody else was checking out the sea urchins, and that's how I got the shot.
Oh, that's such a cool story. I love that.
It was a pretty amazing moment.
I knew there had to be a
awesome.
great story behind that photo.
And we basically, you know, we ate the king crab. We watched him, you know, suffocate right there on the boat and had the water boiling. And we had hundreds of sea urchins. It would have been like some, you know, $1,000 meal at a fancy restaurant in New York.
Oh, my word.
Nice.
How cool is that?
Right. It's
Cracking open the
fresh.
sea urchins and just, you know, throwing a little lemon juice on them and down the hatch.
Wow.
That's awesome.
That's incredible.
This next one, I love the scale because that helicopter is so tiny in this one. It really gives you the scale of the image. Was this when you were training with the rescue guys?
Exactly. And this is an image it was 9:30 at night. The sun had gone down. You know, it looks like the sun just went down in the picture, but the sun had actually gone down like 30, 40 minutes ago. There was no light. And I had just bought that D700. I think I had a D3, so they were the same cameras basically. So I cranked this thing up to ISO 6400. They touted how great this thing was in the dark. I thought, let's find out. And I shot like 200 pictures of this helicopter flying back and forth, and I was directing the helicopter by walkie-talkie with their searchlight, and just blasted away.
You were directing them for you to take pictures?
Exactly. They told me, whatever you want to do, we'll do it unless we get a call. And
That's too cool.
It was like a kid in a candy shop. I know. We needed a key fob for the helicopter because it's like, oh, it's the car. I don't know. Whatever. So,
Now, that's the real light off the helicopter?
that's the real light off the bottom of the helicopter.
Wow.
And
That's bright.
So, you know, ISO 6400, I was shooting like a 15th of a second with a 70-200. There's a funny story behind this one, too. One of my cases flew off the edge of the cliff when the helicopter flew back. And they had to go rescue it was the case for a 600 f4 lens that I had rented from Nikon. And the lens was not in the case, luckily.
Oh, great.
It was just the case. Okay.
Just like bounced off 20 boulders down a like 400-foot cliff.
And they rescued it.
And I was just like, oh man, I'm going to be paying some big money to Nikon for that case. This is horrible. And they rescued it. There wasn't a scratch on the case.
Wow.
Nikon makes an amazing case.
I hope you told Nikon at least. They say, it protects it.
I didn't tell them right away. I told them later.
Later.
We did some testing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
anyway.
Oh my goodness.
Every time you tell one of those stories, it makes me want to read that book now.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these are in that book. That was kind of the point of the book, is tell a bunch of these stories.
That's too cool.
I don't know. I like to debunk the whole myth that we're just out there
having fun.
because we're working insane hours, and you know, I carry 100-pound packs all over the place, which is why I have back troubles. And
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing the result of these images, and obviously, and some of you can tell it took a lot of work. But even the work that we can imagine that it took to get those images, I'm sure pales in comparison to what it really took.
Yeah, well, I mean, like that one you're showing with the guys there, that took like 20 minutes. And that was just 2 strobes, a headlamp, and a speed light. And the headlamp, he's actually holding the guy on the left side of the frame is holding the headlamp pointing at his face because I couldn't quite get the strobe light right in there to light up his face. So there's all kinds of little adjustments you do on the fly to create these images.
Thinking on a whim.
Exactly.
So this image actually makes me think. I mean, we talked a little bit about your gear and your pre-planning. Have any of these advances or anything with CS6 or this new Lightroom has that stuff like helped your digital workflow? Is there anything in particular that's like been just a great? You're just really glad they did it, or?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's digital in a nutshell. There's so many advances with digital that the preview on the back of the camera, like I could have never gotten that image with film.
Yeah.
Because I would have needed like a few hours of prep time, a Polaroid camera. I would have needed 2 assistants. It would have taken so much more time. But with digital, I could, I wasn't using speed lights and a strobes, but I still had to meter. It wasn't like, I just figured it out on the fly. I've done a lot of shots like that before, so it was easy to figure it out. And I didn't have time to set the strobes up on stands even. I just laid them on the ground because there wasn't time for that. The sun was going down.
And more specifically, though, on the software end, is there anything that's
that
stands out for you?
I sent you a surfing image from Waimea that it's an earlier one of that. I think Apple used it for their laptops.
Oh, yeah.
And I didn't send you the before and after, but there's stuff like that you could just never do with film. That were Lightroom. That image right there, the one with the one in the middle there. I mean, if you had seen the original image of that one, there was no contrast, there was no color. You could barely even see there was a wave, much less a surfer, straight out of the camera. And that's because I'm like almost a mile away from the wave, and there's so much salt spray in the air that by the time the light got to the camera, there was not really an image, and so I had to kind of rescue that one from the dead to make it look like my eye saw it. And in Lightroom, I brought the level sliders in and adjusted the contrast and did a whole bunch of work on it to get it to look like that. So I mean, that's where the software can really save us these days.
Oh yeah.
Those 12,000 images that you mentioned, do you have an assistant sometimes helping you when you're climbing? Do you have anybody to help you go through those 12,000 images?
Sometimes it just depends on the shoot. I tend to go through them. I was there, so I know what I've shot, and I have a pretty good idea of where the best images are.
Yeah, you're like, it's coming up right there. That's the one.
Yeah, and that's the reason to have a blazing fast Mac Pro computer, and I have like a $3,000 ASO monitor that shows the entire Adobe RGB color space, so I can blaze through images pretty fast. And I'm actually editing while I'm at the location. So like Tahiti, I was editing every night. As much as I could, so that by the time I got back, it was just a matter of processing the images.
Yeah.
And back to your question about software and stuff, I have to say these days, as a professional and amateur, it doesn't really matter. I think half the process happens after you shoot the picture these days.
Yeah.
Or at least maybe not half, but 30 to 40%, because teaching workshops, I see a lot of people who don't really know how to use the software. And you can get a great image, and if it's not worked up that very well, it's not going to really ever shine.
Yeah.
So I get hired a lot by clients who've seen, what I do in the post-processing, and just because they know I can deliver a really excellent file.
Wow.
As a finished image. So that's a huge part of it these days, for sure.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said for that.
Yeah, I've also, it's very true, because a lot of the people in our group are always saying that they're having a hard time finding their style, and I think all of that kind of, like, if I were to shoot an image and 5 people edit it, we'd all edit it slightly differently, and only one of those images is really going to shine.
Well, maybe not, I don't know. I'm not, as you can see, I'm not trying to edit these like in some fancy way where they don't look like the scene. For the most part, I'm trying to make them look like they did to my eye when I was out there. Exactly. There's very rarely that I get stylistically. Maybe some of my portraits, or I'll turn an image black and white just if I feel it looks better in black and white. And I'll say this, I'm not a Photoshop guru. I know what I know, and I can do a fair amount of things, but I know some of the best retouchers in the world that live here in Santa Fe, and they know so much more than I do. So if there's a client that needs something done to an image, and I'm just like, I don't know how to do that, or I'm not going to do a very good job of that, I'll just send it off to the retoucher and let them, work it up.
Yeah. That's perfect.
That's cool.
All right, guys. Well, we got 10 minutes left. So if anybody out in chat, we need any of your questions. If we have any questions, let us know. We'll continue on. I do want to cover one thing, though, Kathleen, Tim, and Seth, before we get done, so we can come back to the questions or to Michael for a few wrap-up questions. But first, we had a contest for September. And the contest we do in our Facebook group, we have a contest, and the goal there is to get people to go out and shoot and have a topic that they have to go and shoot. So they go and shoot for that month, and hopefully get people to shoot maybe something they haven't shot before, or get to, thinking about that. So what we do is we have an album. You put your photos in the album. Then people vote on it during the month by liking it, and the top 3 with likes then goes to the admins, and the admins vote, and we come up with one winner. The winner, we're about to show all 3 of them. The winner also gets a gift certificate to Stacy Jensen's website, and is the featured photo in our Facebook group for the month. So we had the 3 finalists. Let me see if I can find them here. Nope, not that. There we go. One of them is from our very own Seth White, who's here with us.
That's me.
And his image is up now. That was
very cool.
The other one was Danielle Foster. Seth was I don't know we didn't get titles for all these, so I'm having to we'll just show them. But so we'll need to get titles from you guys after the fact. So we had Seth White, Danielle Foster with the hands, the old hand and the young hand, and then Jackie with the wedding party.
Michael, our topic was celebration this month.
Yeah.
Nice.
And I will tell you that I got too many things going here. Had two things showing, so something bleeded through. It was not an even vote. Which is good. It challenged the admins to pick a winner, and we were not unanimous, which means we really liked all of them, and it makes it difficult for us, which is good. So we had to go to a special tiebreaker, and I'm not going to reveal the tiebreaker's name, but that person voted, and the winner is who was doing that?
Wow.
High five, Tim.
The winner is Danielle Foster with hands.
Yay, Danielle!
Sorry, Sess.
Your image is great too.
Okay. No problem.
And I had just so you don't know, I did not put Seth on the spot. I told him beforehand.
Yeah.
It was difficult because we liked all 3, and really glad everybody got out there and did it, and continue to do that. It's the only way to get better is to get out there and shoot. We all are at different skill levels, and the only way we can improve, I'm sure even Michael, when he goes out there, he looks at the things he did wrong and things he wants to do different next time. I think you never are finished learning. You never are finished getting better. Oh, yeah. So that's the lesson here, is just keep shooting, and we congratulate Danielle. Danielle will send you an email with the code or whatever you need to get for Stacy Jensen's. I do need from all 3 of you the title of what you want to call your photo, name it, give it some kind of name, sure, and any of the links that you have that you want us to direct people to. In our show notes, we'll have all 3 of your photos and links to what website or your Facebook page or whatever you want us to send it to.
Cool.
So do that.
All right. There was one question in chat.
Yes.
About cleaning. How often do you, Michael? How often do you clean your equipment? I mean, since you're always out in these,
That's a good question. I mean, I'm pretty good at keeping my equipment safe. That's definitely priority number 1 on an assignment, because if your equipment goes down, then your assignment's pretty much done.
Yeah.
But I clean my sensors before every single shoot. And maybe not every day. I'll clean them before I go on a trip to Hawaii or Patagonia or wherever it is. Because that just saves me a lot of time in the post processing. And I'll keep them clean while I'm out in the field. I'll towel them off if they look like they're, but I've shot in sideways rain like that Patagonia thing with my D700, no cover on it for 10 days, no problem.
Wow.
I just bought my first full frame camera, and it was a D700. So I love hearing all this.
Yeah,
getting excited, getting amped up over there.
Now you say clean your sensor. We really have never gone over that in the show, and I would advise, unless you know what you're doing, do not take that on yourself. But are you actually going in and?
I wouldn't say that at all.
You wouldn't. You would.
Oh,
I don't
no,
know.
there's a brand called Visible Dust. I'm not sponsored by these guys, so it's not like I'm trying to, pimp them
That
out.
would be the one that you probably hear of most of the time, but I don't know, I'm just afraid of touching.
I'm afraid of it too.
Yeah, I mean, I just say watch the video 5 times and then do it the way they say to do it. And the thing is, the reality is when you open up that, the sensor, you're not actually touching the sensor unless you have the new D800E, and even then you're not touching the sensor. There's like a piece of plate glass over that it's really difficult to scratch, nearly impossible. So you can't really screw it up. The only thing you can screw up is if the shutter closes while your brush is still in there, and then you're going to have to pay $500 for a new shutter.
Yeah.
So I could just lick my shirt and just kind of get in there and do some work, right?
No? The Visible Dust products. And the problem with sending it back to Nikon or Canon is, you pack your camera into the box, you send it there, UPS bounces it all the way to the Nikon facility, and they put it back. They clean it, they put it back in the box, and it bounces all the way back to you.
I think UPS takes really good care of the packages. They handle it one at a time.
Tim works for UPS.
The thing is, like, all the dust particles fall off the side of the chamber, and then you have just as much dust as you had before.
Right.
There you go.
So.
I've got 2 things for you, Michael. First of all, I think that you should put in so you can go shoot for the show Deadliest Catch. I think you would be awesome.
That would be awesome. Yeah.
Cool. I don't think you'd have any fear either.
Well, I don't know. That's different environments, though.
And then number 2, I don't know if you already have one of these, but I didn't see one. I would love to see you put a video together of you shooting. Have someone
behind the
else
scenes
shooting you. I mean, hanging from helicopters and hanging off the side of a cliff and on the boat at the beach. Get some footage so people can see what you do, because that is so intriguing to us.
It is.
Yeah,
you should do a how-to.
Hanging off cliffs, but video. Only in the last few years has it even been possible, and it's usually such a small team that I'm gonna have to work on that, though, for sure.
Do it.
I don't know how much it helps you sell stuff, but I know me as an individual, when I go to a photographer's website and they have like a behind-the-scenes video that's well done, I really like looking at that. It really adds something to it. And the crazy stuff you do, I think that'd be huge.
I think it would skyrocket you, even more than you already are.
And if you do go on Deadliest,
get me any more assignments, but it'll be cool for other photographers to look at. For sure.
It definitely would.
Yeah, it would.
The problem is it's just going to cost a lot of money to make it happen.
That's true.
And it slows everything down when you're shooting, so it can be difficult to pull off.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, you might have to do like a fake, you're not really doing a shoot. You're just out there for the video.
Well, now that, Nikon has top quality digital, HDSR, HD video, it's a little easier than it used to be.
Yeah.
I do want to make a request, though. If you do that, can we make that IMAX? Because the scale of the stuff you shoot is just amazing. So I just want to see
the budget just went up really high.
Yeah.
Blu-ray.
Well, I think the guy from Storm Chasers has got some time in his hand now. That show's been canceled. So
Yeah.
Well, I work with a production company that shoots with Red Epic cameras, so we've got some pretty high resolution.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
If you do get on Deadliest Catch, we would make one request. That you come back on our show afterwards.
Oh yeah.
That would be incredible.
So.
Well, Kathleen is right at the hour. I've kept us on track.
Look at that.
Do I get an A+?
You get a hand clap. Good job.
Get an attaboy.
Well, Michael, thank you again for coming. I know we did not get to go through. We showed all your photos, but we didn't get to talk about all of them. And like we said at the top of the show, it just gives us an opportunity to bring you back, because as we saw, each one of those images had such great stories behind them that we could have spent another couple of hours talking about each photo and their stories. Even the one that looked like it doesn't have as much action as the others had a great story behind it. So I loved hearing those stories behind the images.
And people can read a lot of those stories if they want to check out some of my latest books, or
Now,
some
is
of
the
that
book
stuff.
on? I see the book link on your website. That'll take them to the book.
Yeah, there's 2 printed books and there's 1 ebook that I sell from the website. The 2 printed books are on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, everywhere. So
And
My books.
we will have Michael's links, his website, all that here on the show notes, and to really see the quality of his images, because again, we cannot stream the full quality on the stream, so we're having to do a reduced quality. To see the much higher quality images, you got to go to his website, and there you'll get a much better feel to look at him at full screen, and even the video. I love watching the video that you had there full screen.
thanks.
It was very, very
Yeah, that
good.
was all shot on Red cameras, so super.
Is that why it was wider than it was tall? That it
It's
looked
in a
more.
cinematic aspect, like
Yeah.
when you see a movie it's anamorphic, 18:9.
Hmm.
So we just shot it in a different format than your normal HD to show that it wasn't an HD camera. It was a 4K Red 1.
Okay.
So
All right. Well, thank you everybody for coming. Remember, if you're getting ready, I know it's a little early, but I'm going to start anyway. If you're getting ready to do some of your Christmas shopping and thinking about doing it on Amazon, go to our website, click on the link there. It doesn't cost you anything extra. My mom asked me, "Is it going to cost me extra shipping?" No, Mom, it costs you nothing extra. The show just gets a little bit of credit that we didn't turn around and give away gifts for that. So go out there and do that. If
If you're going to buy a Michael Clark book, go to the Amazon link and
There you
get his
go.
book.
Exactly. If you're going to buy a Michael Clark book, go through the Amazon link. If you're going to buy whatever you're going to buy, go through there. As you go to leave here, don't leave quite yet, but as you go to leave, down below chat, there is a Google ad, and we get a small credit for that too, that we also use for the show. If you haven't joined our Facebook group, go out to our Facebook group and join that, like our page. We do have the contest, the giveaway that we're still doing for this product, the Wacom Intuos tablet, and there's a link on our Facebook page and on our website here at jpeg2RAW where you can get that. It's real easy to sign up, real easy. All you gotta do is like our page, and there's a few other ways you can get some points. We are available this show here. If you're watching it now live, you watched it, but later you can get it from Stitcher Radio, from iTunes, both an audio and 2 video type feeds, so you have multiple choices there. We also are on YouTube, where you can subscribe to the channel and get us on YouTube. And then basically anywhere else you can subscribe to an RSS feed. I use BeyondPod on my Galaxy S3 phone, and I'm sure there's ways to do it on the iPhone too, where you can get them on your phone if you want to do it that way. So if you haven't subscribed yet, you have lots of chances to do that. The show is generally out a few days after the podcast, maybe by Friday. I won't go into details, but I was a little late last week because we had a major plumbing issue here at the house. and I how I preach a backup. Well,
Now
no, it's a good story.
Oh no. That's
Okay,
bad,
I see
buddy.
I didn't see the pun there until I said it.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I did not mean to make that pun, but that's what happened. Yes. And guess what is right below the room where that toilet is?
Oh no.
My server room,
Oh no.
where I have 3 servers. They weren't not damaged, fortunately, but I never did get. I never was too worried because everything is backed up to the cloud. It's backed up here on servers. It says it's still laughing at my pun. It's backed up here on servers, but also backed up to the cloud.
Okay.
So think about that. Anyway, we'll go ahead and end the live show on that. That's a good way to end.
Boy.
Don't leave quite yet, Michael, but good night, everybody.
Good night,
thank
everybody.
you guys for having me on the show.
Oh, so great to have you.
All right, have a good night.
Absolutely.
Okay. We're still in the live chat, but I needed a little bit of space so I can find this spot later. Michael, thank you very much for coming. That was awesome.
Oh, thank you guys. It's fun to hang out and talk with some fellow photographers.
Oh man, so inspiring.
And very approachable. I mean, to be like a top guy, man. Your demeanor is fantastic. I mean, it's nice to hear what you have, and just for you to be approachable.
Yeah, that's really awesome.
I mean, there's no secrets in this, you know. There's no. I mean, heck, that's a question I got about that last book I wrote. One of the editors from Outdoor Photographer was like, "Did you really mean to give away all these secrets?" And I'm like, "There's no secrets in this business. It's just, you know, everybody knows how it works. It's just who's going to put the hard work in and, you know, gets a little lucky here and there."
Right. Well, it's not just knowing it; it's who's doing it, and you're the one that's out there in the middle of the wave with your camera up, you know, firing it off. Not me. So that's
especially
awesome.
Well, especially with what you do, not only does it take the skill of the photographer, but the the physical and the mental skill of what you do. You know, getting in the water, getting on the mountain. That's not something that one, you're finding somebody who has the photography skill, and then the skill to do the other part is not a combination. You're not gonna find that combination. But even then, like we've said many times, even if Michael told us every one of his secrets, we're still not Michael. Michael is still the only Michael.
Right.
Well, I mean, I've learned this in workshops because I teach an adventure sports photography workshop. I teach lighting workshops. I teach digital workflow workshops. And you can tell somebody everything that you know. And it's one thing for them to take all that in. It's a whole other thing for them to go out and actually use it and do something with it.
Exactly.
And for those people that do, it's great, and I don't know. There's been several photographers in my career who have opened up, and back in the film days when nobody talked about anything, that mentors that without those guys I wouldn't be around. And my first mentor, I remember him saying, there's room for all of us. There's no reason to get all freaked out about talking to other photographers. And we didn't compete on any jobs or anything, so it wasn't like a big deal. But I've just kind of kept that ethic that it's not the end of the, just tell everybody how it is. And I think a lot of photographers are that way now.
Yeah, well, we love it. I'm going to add your books to my Christmas list.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I'm probably going to buy it. And definitely going to buy it.
Well, you guys make sure you go through our website.
We will.
The exposed book is better than the adventure sports one, but,
Which one do you like?
The latest one, the exposed one. The adventure sports book is like a how-to book on how to do adventure sports. So if that's not your cup of tea, then you may not enjoy that one as much.
I want the stories is what I want.
Yeah, that's the other one, the exposed book from Pete.
Do you have pictures in it too?
Yeah, that one's kind of a unique book where it talks about the life of a pro and what you go through to get the images, and then it talks about 16 of those images, most of which we showed tonight. And it talks about how they were created, the whole story behind the image that I told you guys.
I love it.
And then it talks about the gear that was used to create it. And then it talks about how it was post-processed for every image.
Stop.
And then there's even a DVD that you can sit there and watch me work up those 16 images.
Stop.
Wow, that's awesome.
Mike, you know what? That would be a really good giveaway for our show.
Yeah, if you guys want to do that, let me know, and I'll ship out a book to whoever. Because I've got copies that I ship out to people.
I think that we definitely should do that. Heck, I think Michael, if you want to donate one, that's fine. I think we may buy. How much are they?
I don't know. They're like $30 on Amazon, $32.
Yeah, we may buy one or two also.
It's kind of an expensive book because of that DVD in the back.
That's awesome. Right. It's worth it though. Yeah.
Just let me know. I mean, I'll be happy to give one away for free and sign it.
That'd be awesome.
Wow.
Oh, sign it.
And sign it.
Stop! I don't want to be an admin anymore.
Oh,
Take me off the list. I want to win it.
I'm not an admin.
What Kathleen's talking about is what Kathleen's talking about is host can't win.
No,
and Sesh, you were on tonight. You can't win.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's right. You're out, Sesh. You're out.
You know what? I did have a quick question though. Are you on Kindle or iBooks version 2?
I think both of those books are available as Kindle books.
Does it have the multimedia stuff in there?
You get a link at the end of the book that you can watch it online.
Okay.
Yeah, and so the exposed book is not really like an intense digital workflow. It's kind of an intermediate level book where we expect people to know how Lightroom works in Photoshop to some degree. My digital workflow ebook is like it's a 430-page monster of a book that goes through every little detail of my digital workflow and talks about how I do everything.
Wow.
I've made a serious amount of money off that book because it talks about a professional photographer's workflow, and we can definitely give away a couple of those because it's not going to cost me anything.
Awesome.
If you want to do a show on digital workflow, more specifically than the photography aspect.
Yes. Yes,
Yeah,
please.
we'd love to have
Before we
you
get
back.
off, Mike's going to reschedule you. Thank you.
We'd love to have you back.
And that book, I mean, you can take from it what you want, but it has a chapter on like color management stuff that I've never seen anywhere.
That's
awesome.
That's
how to calibrate monitors for real, not just like throw the hockey puck up there and.
You mean my hockey puck? This is called a hockey puck.
You mean my little stick?
Exactly, the color monkey.
Or the spider.
So,
what's
so many things that people have never even heard about that I did a ton of research. Anyway, I used to be a physicist, so I get a little geeky with this stuff.
Dang it! I meant to bring that up.
Yeah, I meant to too. It was on my list.
Man.
It was on my list.
Epic fail. That's kind of a big deal. Yeah, I was a physicist. Oh, okay.
It wasn't that.
So you were like Sheldon Cooper?
What's
Sheldon
that?
Cooper.
You like Sheldon Cooper?
Who's that?
Big Bang
Big
Theory.
Big Bang Theory.
Oh, I don't watch
okay.
that.
Yeah,
Sheldon
it's
is
pretty
great.
funny. I knew a few guys in physics school that were kind of like that, but not quite that out there.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Okay,
guys-
Michael,
Alright.
this is a big thing. Your favorite guest. My favorite guest today. Yeah.
Well, you guys are the most fun I've had in a podcast in a long time. So
Oh,
good.
great.
Awesome.
Great.
just because there's multiple people, and I got to say, this Google Plus thing is fun.
Isn't it cool?
It's pretty
It
fresh.
does work.
Yeah.
It
Works
works really
better
well.
than Skype.
Do
We
you
had a lot
see
of
all your
issues.
Google effects, Michael? Look up in the top. It says Google Effects, and you can do
We're about to get
sounds,
crazy now.
or
Oh no.
or you can do faces.
What do you mean?
No way.
Yeah, this thing is fun. That's
Oh
what
my
I would show up
God.
with if I
How
was
does he
shooting with
do
you at the
that?
beach.
Those guys are crazy. Well,
Yeah.
I gave a talk at Google a couple years ago that you brought up, Seth, and I'm going back out there, and it's I used to be a physicist, so I'm used to being around smart people, but it was wild being around those guys. They'd start talking about programming stuff, and I would be gone in less than 30 seconds. I'd just
Wow.
I have no clue what the guy's talking about.
Oh,
So
wow.
it's pretty amazing. Seeing
Yes,
some of this
we
technology.
have to
That's-
have
that's-
you
that's
come
really
back.
That's really cool. Shoot.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and cut everything off so we don't burn Michael out. And then, Michael, I'll be sending you an email to talk about rescheduling somewhere down the road. Right now, I think we're booked for a while, and I'm sure you got a busy schedule too. But we'll work something
right.
out.
Yeah, and let me know the link where this is, and I'll put it on my blog so people can go download it too and check it out.
Awesome. Very
Okay.
cool.
So,
I'll send you an email. All right, everybody out in chat, I'm going to go ahead and end the live stream, and we're going to be heading out.
Good night,
thank you,
guys.
guys.
Good night,
Good
everybody.
night, everybody.
Yeah.
Seth, it was fun doing a show with you.
It was cool. It was nice talking to you.